Commander Kyle Brennan stood at the window of Conference Room 7, watching ships drift past the Galactic Council station. Each vessel represented a different species, a different world, a different way of thinking. Some were massive cargo haulers shaped like bloated insects. Others were sleek diplomatic cruisers that looked more like art than machines. Kyle had been stationed here for 2 years, and he still found the diversity breathtaking. Behind him, the morning security briefing was winding down. Lieutenant Ashley Drake was presenting the Human Security Team's sector report. Her voice was calm and professional as she outlined patrol schedules and maintenance updates. The other species representatives listened with varying degrees of attention. Most seemed bored. Security Director Zarmoth, a Thraken warrior who stood 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms, shifted in his reinforced chair. His exoskeleton made a soft clicking sound. When Ashley finished, he leaned forward. His voice was deep and rumbling. "Commander Brennan, your team patrols the diplomatic quarter. That sector has the highest concentration of council members. Are you confident your people can handle a serious threat?" Kyle turned from the window. He knew what Zarmoth was really asking. The Thrakens were bred for combat. Their planet had high gravity and dangerous predators. They viewed humans as physically weak, suited more for negotiations than protection. "We train constantly," Kyle said. "Our response times meet all council standards. We work well with the other security teams." Zarmoth's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "I don't question your dedication, Commander. I question your species' physical capabilities. Humans are small, fragile. When I review incident reports, human security personnel require medical attention more often than any other species." Ashley spoke up before Kyle could respond. "We also resolve more situations without violence than any other species, Director." "Maybe that's worth something." The briefing ended soon after. Kyle and Ashley walked back to their office in silence. They had heard variations of this conversation many times. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for only 47 years. They were the newest members, and most species still saw them as curiosities rather than equals. That evening, Ambassador Megan Cortez hosted a diplomatic reception. The Grand Hall was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds. Kyle attended in dress uniform, part of the security detail watching from the perimeter. He found these events fascinating and exhausting in equal measure. High Counselor Vrenthal approached Kyle during a lull in the conversations. The Calaxian was impossibly tall, his crystalline skin refracting the lights into rainbow patterns. His species had been part of the Council for 12,000 years. They measured time in centuries and viewed younger species with patient condescension. "Commander Brennan," Vrenthal's voice had a musical quality, "I have been curious about something. Your species evolved on a planet with many large predators, yes? Yet humans are not particularly strong or fast compared to those creatures. How did you survive long enough to develop intelligence?" Kyle had answered similar questions before. "We used tools. Spears and fire, then more complex weapons. We also worked in groups. Cooperation was our main advantage, yes. Tool use and social bonds." Vrenthal seemed satisfied with this answer, the typical path of intelligent species. "Though I must say, humans seem remarkably peaceful given your predatory environment. The Thrakens evolved among predators as well, but they retained their aggressive nature. You did not." Kyle smiled politely. "We had our violent periods, but we learned that cooperation works better than conflict." Later that night, Ashley found a young Calaxian diplomat named Sir Etha in the station's observation lounge. The young alien was fascinated by Earth's culture and asked endless questions. Most species learned the basics about new members. Earth had achieved faster-than-light travel, unified their planet under one government, and presented themselves as peaceful explorers. But Sir Etha wanted to know more. Did humans really fight wars against each other? Sir Etha asked. "Before space travel?" Ashley nodded. "Many wars. For thousands of years. Over territory, resources, beliefs. It was a difficult time in our history, but you stopped. How?" "We nearly destroyed ourselves," Ashley said quietly. "Nuclear weapons in the 21st century. We came very close to extinction. That scared us enough to change. We formed a world government and focused on survival instead of conflict." Sir Etha was silent for a moment. "My people never had such weapons. We advanced slowly, carefully. Perhaps that's why we survived so long. We never had the capability for such destruction." Ashley looked out at the stars. Maybe, but we learned from it. That has to count for something. 3 days later, Kyle was reviewing patrol schedules when the first alert came through. Long-range sensors had detected an unauthorized vessel approaching the station. This happened occasionally. Usually it was a cargo ship with outdated navigation data or a private explorer who didn't know they were entering restricted space. But the vessel wasn't responding to hailing frequencies. It was moving fast, too fast for a civilian ship. Kyle forwarded the information to Zarmoth's office and increased the alert level in his sector. Ashley arrived at the security office within minutes. What do we have? Unknown vessel, not responding to comms. Could be a malfunction, but we're treating it as a potential threat. Kyle brought up the tactical display. Station defense systems are powering up. Zarmoth has scrambled intercept fighters. The station's alarm system activated, a low pulsing tone that echoed through the corridors. Diplomats would be moving to secure areas. Security teams would be taking positions at critical junctions. It was a well-rehearsed procedure. Then the sensors updated. What they thought was one ship was actually 6 ships flying in tight formation. They had been using some kind of cloaking technology to mask their numbers. 6 vessels, Kyle said. His voice remained calm, but his mind was racing. That's not a navigation error. That's deliberate. The communication system crackled. A new voice came through, harsh and distorted. Galactic Council Station, this is the Void Reaver fleet. You will stand down all defensive systems immediately. You will grant us access to the station. You have 20 minutes to comply. If you refuse, we will destroy the station and everyone on it. Ashley looked at Kyle. Her expression was carefully neutral, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. The Void Reavers were legendary in the worst possible way. They were pirates, mercenaries, and killers who operated in the lawless regions beyond Council space. They had never attacked a Council facility before. This is big, Ashley said quietly. Kyle nodded. He activated the comm to his security teams. All units, this is Commander Brennan. We have a confirmed hostile situation. The Void Reavers are demanding our surrender. Follow lockdown protocols. Protect the diplomats. Stay sharp. Throughout the station, security personnel took positions. The Thrakens loaded their heavy weapons. The Ven activated their telepathic defense networks. The Quarren sealed their water-filled sectors. Every species prepared according to their nature and training. The human security teams moved quietly through their assigned areas. They checked door seals and evacuation routes. They guided frightened diplomats to safe rooms. They were calm and methodical. Nobody watching them would have guessed that something ancient was stirring in the back of their minds. A part of human biology that had been dormant for centuries, waiting patiently for the moment when it might be needed again. The 20-minute deadline ticked down. The Council refused to surrender. Zarmoth's defense plan was solid, but everyone knew the Reavers had superior firepower. This was going to be a fight. Kyle stood in the security office watching the tactical display. His breathing was slow and steady. His heart rate was controlled. But deep in his brain, ancient neural pathways were beginning to activate. Pathways that connected to instincts millions of years old. Pathways that remembered when humans were both predator and prey. Pathways that knew how to hunt. The Void Reaver ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They appeared inside the station's defensive perimeter, bypassing the early warning systems. Kyle watched the tactical display as the 6 vessels took up positions around the station. Each ship bristled with weapons. Zarmoth's voice came through the command channel. All security teams prepare for boarding actions. They're positioning for breach maneuvers. The station shuddered as the Reaver ships fired grappling systems. Metal screeched against metal. Alarms blared throughout the corridors. On the tactical display, red markers appeared at 3 different points on the station's hull. Breaches confirmed, Ashley said. She was pulling up security camera feeds. North Docking Ring, Engineering Section, and the Merchant Quarter. They're coming in hard. Kyle allocated his teams. Harper, take your squad to the North Docking Ring. Chen, you've got engineering. We'll cover the diplomatic quarter. He paused. Remember your training. These are professionals. Don't take unnecessary risks. The first reports came in within seconds. The Void Reavers were using heavy weapons and overwhelming force. They wore advanced armor and moved with military precision. This wasn't a random pirate raid. This was a planned assault. Zarmoth deployed his Thraken warriors to the breach points. The Thrakens were the Council's best fighters, trained from birth for combat. They met the Reavers in brutal close-quarters fighting. Plasma fire lit up the corridors. Explosions echoed through the station, but the Reavers had better equipment. Their armor absorbed shots that would have dropped ordinary soldiers. Their weapons cut through defensive positions. The Thrakans were skilled, but they were being pushed back. Kyle moved through the diplomatic quarter with Ashley and 4 other human security officers. They evacuated the last diplomats from the outer chambers, sealing doors behind them. The council members were frightened. Many had never experienced violence firsthand. High Counselor Vrenthal was in the main council chamber with Ambassador Cortez and 30 other high-ranking diplomats. It was the most secure room in the sector, with reinforced walls and independent life support. They should have been safe there. Then the tactical display lit up with a new threat. A Reaver strike team was moving directly toward the council chamber. They had bypassed the main corridors and were using maintenance tunnels. Somehow they knew exactly where the diplomats were hiding. They have inside information, Ashley said. They know the station layout too well. Kyle opened a channel to the council chamber. Ambassador Cortez, you have hostile forces approaching your position. They'll reach you in approximately 8 minutes. Cortez's voice was steady despite the situation. Understood, Commander. What are our options? We're 7 minutes away. I'm requesting immediate backup from Director Zarmoth. Kyle switched channels. Director, we need a strike team at the council chamber immediately. Reavers are converging on the diplomats. Zarmoth's response was strained. Negative, Commander. All my teams are engaged. I can redirect a squad, but they're 12 minutes out. Hold your position until they arrive. 12 minutes. The diplomats didn't have 12 minutes. The Reavers would breach the chamber in 8. Kyle looked at the tactical display, calculating routes and response times. His mind was processing information faster than normal. Details were sharper. His hearing picked up sounds he usually wouldn't notice. Ashley was watching him. She knew that look. She felt it herself, a change in perception. The world was becoming clearer and simpler. Threats and targets, obstacles and paths. The complexity of civilization was fading, replaced by something more primal. Kyle, she said quietly. We're going in, aren't we? He nodded. Something had shifted in him. The careful diplomatic commander was receding. Something older was taking his place. We don't have a choice. Director, we're moving to intercept, Kyle said into the comm. Negative, Commander. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Wait for the Thrakan team. Kyle cut the channel. He looked at his team. 6 humans against 15 Void Reavers. By any logical calculation, they should wait for backup. But logic was becoming distant. Instinct was taking over. Equipment check, Kyle said. His voice had changed. It was quieter, more focused. Light weapons only. We're going to move fast and use the terrain. They're stronger, but we're smaller. They have better armor, but we know this station better than they do. The other human officers looked at each other. They felt it too, the change. Their bodies were responding to the threat in ways they hadn't experienced before. Adrenaline was flooding their systems, but instead of panic, it brought clarity. Their senses sharpened. Their movements became more fluid. They moved through the corridors like water, using access tunnels and maintenance shafts that were too small for larger species. Kyle's breathing had changed. Slow and deep, conserving energy. His heart rate was steady despite the situation. He was entering a state that humans had used for millions of years. A state where the body operated beyond normal limits. They encountered the first group of Reavers in a maintenance corridor. 8 heavily armed mercenaries in full combat armor. The Reavers saw the humans and raised their weapons. They expected a standard firefight. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for years afterward. The humans didn't engage directly. Kyle and 2 others dropped through a floor grate before the Reavers could fire. Ashley and the remaining officers scattered into side passages. The Reavers moved to pursue, but the humans were already behind them. Kyle emerged from a ventilation shaft. 1 Reaver went down before the others realized the humans had circled around. Ashley appeared from a different direction. Another Reaver fell. The Reavers tried to regroup, but the humans were everywhere and nowhere. They used the station's infrastructure like it was their natural habitat. They appeared, struck, and vanished. They were patient. They waited for mistakes. And when the Reavers made those mistakes, the humans were there. A security camera captured 30 seconds of the engagement. In the station's command center, Zarmoth watched the footage in silence. The humans moved like nothing he had ever seen. Not like soldiers, like predators. They used every shadow, every blind spot. Their attacks were precise and devastating. Within 4 minutes, all 8 Reavers were down. The humans moved on without pause, heading for the council chamber. They didn't celebrate. They didn't rest. They simply continued hunting. The next group of Reavers had been warned by their fallen comrades. They knew humans were coming. They set up defensive positions and waited. But it didn't help. The humans didn't attack the way the Reavers expected. They didn't charge or take cover and trade fire. They infiltrated. They surrounded. They struck from unexpected angles. Kyle's perception of time had altered. Everything seemed to move slowly. He could see the patterns in his enemies' movements. He could predict where they would be. His body moved without conscious thought, responding to millions of years of evolutionary programming. They reached the council chamber just as the Reaver strike team breached the final door. 15 Reavers were flooding into the chamber where the diplomats huddled behind overturned furniture. Kyle and his team were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Kyle didn't hesitate. He vaulted over a barrier and landed among the Reavers. Ashley was right behind him. The other humans spread out, moving with terrifying coordination. They had stopped communicating verbally. They were reading each other's movements, working together with unconscious precision. The fight in the council chamber lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, the diplomats sat in stunned silence. They had watched their human protectors transform into something they didn't recognize, something ancient and terrifying, something that hunted without mercy or hesitation. The Void Reavers, hardened mercenaries who had faced countless enemies, had broken and fled from 6 humans. Ambassador Cortez watched Kyle Brennan stand among the fallen Reavers. His chest rose and fell with deep, controlled breaths. His eyes scanned the room, constantly checking for threats. He looked like the same man she had worked with for 2 years, but something fundamental had changed. She could see it in the way he moved, in the intensity of his focus. High Counselor Vrenthal slowly rose from behind the overturned table where he had taken cover. His crystalline skin was dim, a sign of shock and Calaxians. He looked at Kyle with an expression that might have been fear or wonder. Perhaps both. "Commander," Vrenthal's voice was quiet. "What did we just witness?" Kyle turned to face him. As he did, something in his expression shifted. The predatory intensity faded slightly. He blinked several times as if waking from a dream. "We secured the chamber, High Counselor. The immediate threat has been neutralized." But that wasn't what Vrenthal was asking. The other diplomats were staring at the humans with new eyes. These weren't the friendly diplomatic security officers they thought they knew. These were something else entirely. Zarmoth and his Thraken strike team arrived moments later. The warriors entered the chamber with weapons raised, ready for combat. They stopped when they saw the scene. The humans were standing calmly among neutralized Reavers. The diplomats were safe. The fight was already over. Zarmoth approached Kyle slowly. The Thraken director towered over the human commander, but for the first time he looked uncertain. "Commander Brennan, report. We intercepted the Reaver strike team before they could harm the council members. We encountered 3 groups of hostiles total. All threats have been eliminated." Kyle's voice was professional, but Zarmoth could hear the fatigue underneath. 3 groups. Zarmoth's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The security footage shows you engaged 23 enemy combatants with 6 personnel. That should not have been possible." Ashley stepped forward. "We used the terrain to our advantage, Director. We know the station better than the Reavers did." It was a reasonable explanation, but everyone in the room knew it wasn't the complete truth. Terrain advantage didn't explain what they had seen. The humans had moved with a speed and efficiency that defied normal limits. They had fought like machines, but machines with instinct and intuition. The rest of the Void Reaver attack was repelled within the hour. The remaining mercenaries retreated to their ships when they realized their strike teams had failed. The station's defense systems disabled 2 Reaver vessels before the others escaped into faster-than-light travel. In the aftermath, the station went through damage assessment and casualty reports. 37 security personnel from various species had been killed. Another 52 were injured. The Void Reavers had inflicted terrible damage in the brief time they were aboard, but no diplomats had died. The council members had been protected, and everyone knew that was largely due to the actions of 6 human security officers who had done something that shouldn't have been possible. Medical teams examined Kyle, Ashley and the other humans who had been in the fight. The doctors found elevated adrenaline levels, but those were expected after combat. What wasn't expected were the other readings. The humans' bodies had undergone temporary physiological changes during the engagement. Their heart rates had actually decreased during the most intense fighting. Their reaction times had improved by measurable amounts. Their pain response had been partially suppressed. A Calaxian doctor named Trelvin studied the data with fascination. "This is remarkable. Your species has a built-in combat enhancement system. Your bodies automatically optimize for sustained physical exertion during high-stress situations." Kyle sat on the medical bed, exhausted. "It's not something we think about. It just happens, but how?" Trelvin asked. "Most species respond to danger with increased heart rate and panic responses. You do the opposite. You become calmer and more efficient." "Evolution," Ashley said from the next bed. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey over long distances, sometimes for hours or even days. We needed to stay calm during the hunt. Panic wastes energy." Trelvin made notes on his datapad. "Persistence hunting. Yes, I've read about this. But I thought it was ancient history for your species. Something your ancestors did before civilization." "The instinct never went away," Kyle said. "It's still there, buried in our biology. Most humans never experience it. We live comfortable lives. We don't need to hunt anymore. But the capability is still there, waiting." An emergency council session was called that evening. Every species representative attended, even those who were injured. Ambassador Cortez sat in the human delegation seat, preparing for a difficult conversation. Frenthal called the session to order. His voice was grave. "We gather in the aftermath of a terrible attack. We mourn those who fell protecting this station. But we must also discuss what we learned during this crisis. Specifically, we must discuss the nature of humanity." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some species looked confused. Others looked wary. A representative from the Siltar Collective spoke first. The energy being's voice crackled through its mechanical body. "We have reviewed the security footage. Human personnel engaged in combat far beyond expected parameters. We request explanation. Are all humans capable of such actions?" Cortez stood. She had spent hours preparing for this moment. "What you witnessed is a biological response that exists in all humans. We call it different things. Fight or flight response. Battle fury, the zone. It's an evolutionary trait that helped our ancestors survive." "Survive how?" another representative asked. "By becoming killing machines. By pursuing prey until it was exhausted," Cortez said calmly. "By continuing when other predators would have given up. By pushing past pain and fatigue when survival demanded it. Human ancestors hunted by outlasting their targets. We evolved to enter a mental state where nothing matters except the objective. In ancient times, that objective was catching food. In modern times, it can be protecting the innocent." Zarmoth spoke from his position near the security station. "Ambassador Cortez, you say all humans have this capability. But most human civilians do not fight like your security personnel did." "Why not?" "Because it's dormant in most of us," Cortez explained. "Modern human society is comfortable and safe. Most people never experience the kind of stress that triggers this response. But soldiers, athletes, anyone whose life involves physical extremes, they can access it. They train to activate and control it." Saritha stood from the junior diplomatic section. "Ambassador, you said humans can control this response? Turn it on and off?" "With training, yes. Commander Brennan and his team are military professionals. They know how to trigger the response when needed and suppress it when it's not. That control is what separates us from mindless violence." A heated debate erupted. Some species argued that humans were too dangerous to remain in the council. Others pointed out that humans had used their capabilities to protect the council, not threaten it. The discussion continued for hours. Finally, Vrenthal raised a hand for silence. "I was there. I saw what happened. The humans did not lose control. They did not harm innocents. They eliminated threats with precision and then immediately returned to their normal behavior. That demonstrates a level of self-control that is, frankly, remarkable." The vote was close, but humanity remained a member of the Galactic Council. However, the relationship had changed forever. The galaxy now understood that humans were not weak or helpless. They were dormant predators who had chosen peace. And that choice made them more dangerous, not less, because they could activate their hunting instincts at will and then put them away again. The universe had never encountered anything quite like that before. 3 weeks after the Void Reaver attack, Kyle found himself in an unexpected position. He was standing in a lecture hall on the Calaxian education deck, facing 200 Council security personnel from 30 different species. They had come to learn about human combat techniques. The request had come from Zarmoth himself. The Thraken director had spent days reviewing combat footage and interview records. He had concluded that human fighting methods were fundamentally different from anything the Council currently taught. And if the Council was going to defend itself effectively, they needed to understand those methods. Kyle felt uncomfortable with the attention. He wasn't a natural teacher. But Zarmoth had been insistent. The Council needs to understand what you did, Commander. Not to fear it, but to learn from it. So Kyle stood at the front of the hall and tried to explain millions of years of evolution in simple terms. Ashley sat in the front row ready to help if he got stuck. Most species fight when cornered, Kyle began. That's basic survival instinct. But humans evolved differently. We didn't just fight when cornered. We pursued. We tracked. We hunted. He pulled up a holographic image of Earth. Our planet had large predators, faster than us, stronger than us, better armed with claws and teeth. We survived by being smarter and more persistent. We used tools. We worked in groups. And most importantly, we never gave up. A Quarren officer raised a tentacle. But Commander, many species use persistence. Why is the human version different? Because we can activate it consciously, Ashley answered, standing to join Kyle. It's not just adrenaline. Our entire nervous system changes. Our bodies enter a state where we can sustain maximum effort for extended periods. We call it the hunter's focus, Kyle continued. During the attack, my team entered that state. Our heart rate slowed. Our perception changed. We stopped thinking in complex terms and started operating on instinct. We could see patterns in the enemy's movement. We could predict where they would be, and we could push our bodies beyond normal limits. The audience was silent, absorbing this information. A Thraken warrior stood. Commander, my species trains from birth for combat. We are bred for war, yet you defeated Void Reavers that had repelled my warriors. How? Zarmoth answered before Kyle could. The director had entered the hall quietly during the lecture. Because there is a difference between warriors and hunters, Kraltalk. We Thrakens fight for honor and territory. We engage directly. We value strength and courage. He moved to the front of the hall. Humans hunt for survival. They don't care about honor. They care about results. They will use any advantage, any tactic. They will wait for hours if necessary. They will attack from behind, from above, from angles you don't expect. And they will continue long after any reasonable being would have given up. Zarmoth looked at Kyle with something that might have been respect. That is not a criticism, Commander. That is simply observation. Your species evolved as pursuit predators. You are built to outlast and outthink your opponents. It is a different kind of strength. Over the following weeks, Kyle and Ashley ran training exercises with multi-species teams. They taught pursuit tactics, patience, and pattern recognition. They showed other species how to use the environment as a weapon, how to move silently, how to wait for the perfect moment. Most species struggled with the concepts. They were used to direct confrontation. The idea of avoiding direct engagement seemed cowardly to many warriors. But slowly some began to understand. A Ven telepath realized that human tactics relied on the same principle as telepathic combat, anticipating and manipulating enemy behavior. A Quarren officer saw the similarities to underwater hunting techniques used by their ancestors. Saritha became a regular attendee at the training sessions. The young Calaxian was fascinated by human history and psychology. She spent hours in the station's archives researching Earth's past. One evening, she found Ashley in the observation lounge and sat down beside her. I've been reading about human warfare. Your species fought each other constantly for thousands of years. Ashley nodded. We did. It's not something we're proud of. But that's what I don't understand, Saritha said. You had this capability for incredible violence. You fought wars that killed millions, yet you also created art, music, philosophy. You built hospitals to heal the wounded even while you created weapons to wound them. How can one species contain such contradictions? Ashley was quiet for a moment, watching the stars. Because we're complicated. We have the capacity for terrible violence, yes. But we also have capacity for incredible compassion. We can hunt, but we can also nurture. We can destroy, but we can also create. That duality is what makes us human. And the hunter's focus? Saritha asked. Where does that fit? It's a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or evil. During the attack, we used it to protect people. In our history, it was sometimes used to harm people. The difference is the choice we make. Ambassador Cortez watched these developments with mixed feelings. On one hand, humanity was gaining respect in the Council. Other species no longer dismissed humans as weak or insignificant. On the other hand, she had spent 2 decades building humanity's reputation as peaceful diplomats. Now that reputation was complicated by the knowledge of what humans could become when threatened. High Counselor Vrenthal requested a private meeting with her. They met in his office, a chamber decorated with crystals that had been grown over centuries. The Calaxian moved slowly, his ancient body showing the weight of his long life. Ambassador Cortez, I owe your species an apology. Cortez was surprised. High Counselor? We Calaxians have been part of this council for 12,000 years. In that time, we have seen countless species come and go. We developed certain assumptions. We believed that peaceful species were inherently weak. That strength required aggression. We were wrong. He turned to look at her, his crystalline face reflecting the soft light. Your species chose peace despite having the capacity for war. That is not weakness. That is the highest form of strength. You could have presented yourselves as conquerors when you joined the council. Instead, you presented yourselves as diplomats. You reserved your dangerous capabilities for when they were truly needed. We learned from our mistakes, Cortez said quietly. We nearly destroyed ourselves. That teaches certain lessons. Perhaps that is what we needed to learn from you. Not how to fight, but why to fight. And more importantly, why not to fight. Vrenthal paused. The council will be voting soon on a new security structure. I will be recommending that humans take a leadership role. Your Commander Brennan and Lieutenant Drake have proven themselves capable not just as fighters, but as teachers. The council needs that perspective. News traveled fast through the station. Within days, everyone knew that the council was reorganizing its security forces. Human tactical doctrine was being incorporated into standard training. Kyle and Ashley were being promoted to director-level positions. Not everyone was happy about this. Some species still feared human capabilities. Some resented the attention humans were receiving. But the majority understood that the council had learned an important lesson. Peace was not maintained through wishful thinking. It was maintained through strength, wisely applied and carefully restrained. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest achievement was not discovering faster-than-light travel or unifying their planet. It was learning to control their hunter instincts, learning to be gentle despite being dangerous, learning that the strongest person in the room is often the one who chooses not to fight. That lesson would reshape the Galactic Council in ways no one could yet predict. 3 months had passed since the Void Reaver attack. The station had been repaired. The wounded had healed. Life had returned to something approaching normal. But the changes ran deeper than anyone expected. Kyle stood in his new office, still adjusting to his promotion. Director of Special Response. It sounded impressive, but the job was actually simpler than his old position. He trained rapid response teams and advised on tactical situations. Ashley was his deputy, handling day-to-day operations while he focused on strategic planning. The most unexpected change was in how other species treated human security personnel. Diplomats who had once barely acknowledged the humans now specifically requested them as bodyguards. Not because humans were the strongest or the best armed, but because everyone now understood that humans would never abandon those under their protection. A Calaxian senator explained it to Kyle during a routine security briefing. We Calaxians live for thousands of years. We have seen many species come and go, but we have never seen a species that combines your particular traits. You are patient until patience ends. You are gentle until gentleness fails. Then you become something else entirely. That is valuable. Sarmuth had become an unexpected ally and friend. The Thraken director spent hours discussing military history with Kyle, comparing human and Thraken tactical approaches. They were fundamentally different, but Zarmoth saw value in both. My people are warriors, Zarmoth said during one of their conversations. We fight with honor. We value courage and strength. Your people are hunters. You fight with efficiency. You value results and survival. Neither approach is superior. They are simply different. But you can teach your warriors to be more patient, Kyle suggested. To think like hunters when the situation requires it. And you can teach your hunters to stand their ground when retreat is not an option, Zarmoth replied. We learn from each other. That is the purpose of the Council. The training programs that Kyle and Ashley had started were now permanent parts of Council security doctrine. Multi-species teams learned pursuit tactics, patience, and strategic thinking. They learned to recognize and exploit enemy patterns. They learned that the fastest victory isn't always the best victory. Ser Etha had become something of an expert on human culture. The young Calaxian diplomat had written several papers analyzing human evolution and its effects on modern human behavior. She had uncovered something that surprised even Ambassador Cortez. You celebrate your hunter heritage constantly, Ser Etha explained during a presentation to the Council's Cultural Committee. Your sports are almost all based on pursuit and evasion. Football, basketball, hockey. They're all variants of chase games. Your children play tag and hide and seek. Your entertainment is filled with chase scenes and pursuit narratives. She displayed images of human marathon runners. And this, running for hours just to prove you can. No prey, no threat. You simply run because your bodies and minds are built for it. You honor your evolutionary past even in peacetime. Ambassador Cortez had never thought about it that way. She realized Ser Etha was right. Humans had integrated their hunting heritage into every aspect of their culture. They had domesticated the hunter instinct, turned it into art and sport and recreation. It was still there, always present but channeled into constructive forms. Then a new crisis emerged. A species called the Vraxen had been expanding aggressively along the galactic edge. They had ignored diplomatic communications and threatened several independent colonies. The Vraxon were not members of the Council and seemed uninterested in negotiation. The Council debated their response for days. Military action was an option, but it would mean war. Trade sanctions would take too long to have effect. They needed a diplomatic solution, but the Vraxen had rejected every ambassador sent to them. High Counselor Vrenthal proposed something unexpected. Send a human delegation, not as warriors but as diplomats backed by the knowledge of what humans can become if diplomacy fails. The Vraxen have heard about the Void Reaver incident by now. Every species in this sector has. Let them negotiate with people they know are dangerous but choose to be peaceful. The vote was nearly unanimous. Kyle and Ashley were assigned to lead the diplomatic mission. Ambassador Cortez would head the negotiations, but everyone understood the real message being sent. The Council was offering peace, but it was peace backed by the threat of what would happen if the Vraxon forced a conflict. The night before departure, Kyle couldn't sleep. He found himself in the observation lounge watching the stars. A young human security officer named Luke Martinez found him there. The kid was barely 22, fresh from Earth. Director Brennan, can I ask you something? Kyle nodded. Of course. Everyone keeps talking about the hunter trigger, about how we can become something different when we need to. Luke hesitated. Aren't you afraid of what might happen if we're forced to fight again? Afraid of what we might become? Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Every human carries the hunter inside them. For most people, it sleeps their entire lives. That's not weakness. That's the victory of civilization over instinct. But when someone threatens the defenseless, when innocent lives hang in the balance, the hunter wakes. He turned to look at the young officer, not because we wanted to, because that's what we evolved to do. We protect, we pursue. We never stop until the threat is gone. The galaxy knows that now. They understand we're not violent people, but we are capable of controlled violence when necessary. That's not something to fear, Kyle continued. That's something to respect. And more importantly, something to control. We're not animals. We're not machines. We're humans. We can choose when to activate that part of ourselves and when to put it away. That choice is what makes us civilized. Luke nodded slowly. So we're not dangerous because we can fight. We're dangerous because we can choose not to. Exactly. The diplomatic mission departed the next morning. The human delegation traveled in a small, fast ship accompanied by a council escort. As they approached Vraxen space, every species in the galaxy watched and waited. Ambassador Cortez stood on the bridge reviewing her notes. Kyle and Ashley stood nearby, wearing diplomatic uniforms but carrying the quiet confidence of people who knew they could handle any situation. Do you think they'll negotiate? Ashley asked. They will, Cortez said. They've heard the stories by now. They know what happened to the Void Reavers. They'll negotiate because they're smart enough to recognize that diplomacy is better than the alternative. Kyle smiled slightly. And if they're not smart enough, then they'll learn the same lesson the Reavers learned, Cortez said quietly. That humanity's greatest strength isn't violence. It's the wisdom to reserve violence for when it's absolutely necessary, combined with the capability to execute it with terrifying efficiency when that moment comes. The ship crossed into Vraxan space. Sensors immediately detected multiple vessels moving to intercept. The moment of truth had arrived. Back on the council station, Zarmoth watched the sensor feeds with Renthal. The two unlikely friends stood in silence, both thinking about how much had changed in 3 short months. They will succeed, Renthal said confidently. How can you be certain? Zarmoth asked. Because the Vraxan are looking at a species that appears peaceful and reasonable, but underneath that peaceful exterior, they sense something predatory, something patient, something that will hunt them to the end of the galaxy if they make the wrong choice. That knowledge changes the equation. Renthal's crystalline form glowed softly. The humans taught us something important. The most dangerous creatures are not the ones that are always violent. The most dangerous creatures are the ones that are gentle by choice, because those creatures can become violent at any moment, and when they do it with purpose and control. On the human delegation ship, Ambassador Cortez received the first communication from the Vraxan. They were willing to talk. The mission would be difficult and delicate, but it would be a negotiation, not a battle. Kyle felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. The hunter instinct that had been coiled and ready began to relax. This was what humans did best. They adapted. They chose the appropriate response. Violence when necessary, diplomacy when possible. Ashley caught his eye and smiled. They had come a long way from being dismissed as the weak security team. They had proven themselves not through aggression, but through capability combined with restraint. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's peaceful nature was a choice, not a limitation, and that choice, made again and again in countless moments, was what would define humanity's place in the galactic community, not as conquerors or victims, but as a species that understood both the necessity and the cost of violence, as people who could hunt but chose to build, as the dormant predators who taught the galaxy that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to protect. The Council had witnessed humanity's hunter trigger without warning. Now they would witness something even more impressive, humanity's ability to choose peace while never forgetting how to fight.